Governing ANC has suggested extensive changes to how certain events should be broadcast on television. Key among these is how viewers should consume sport. The party has proposed a ban on exclusive broadcasts of national team sports such as the Springboks, the Proteas and Bafana Bafana. The proposal is contained in a widely circulated document ahead of the ANC's policy conference in July. The move, if successful during debates, may help financially constrained national broadcaster SABC, which has battled to collect license fees from viewers. Joining us now to outline how this would work in practice is head of the ANC subcommittee on communications, Nkenke Kekana. Nkenke, good evening and thank you very much for your time and joining us today here on In Focus. What's the motivation for this particular proposal? I mean, ICASA is already seized with this matter. Even since 2020, ICASA was arguing the fact that only 10.6% of viewers use pay TV, and earlier this month, they've even relaunched the inquiry into subscription broadcast service market. Why is the ANC tackling this one? Is the motivation capacity? Is the motivation finances?
The context is that we have a policy conference which is going to come before our national conference. Every 6 months before our national conference, we do have this consultation. The discussion document has gone to branches of the ANC, and of course we also are happy that you as a broadcaster are picking up these issues. So the discussion has to take place in the country about exactly what the future is going to look like. But the context is important, Tabo. What is the context? The context is that we are switching off analog television and we are going to digital broadcasting. Digital broadcasting for the public broadcaster means the 1969-76 model of 3 channels and everything squeezed together is coming to an end. We are now going to have a multiplicity of channels that are available free to air in your homes. All you have to do is to get an aerial and get a television set that has a tuner. So in future, and the future is now, because we are switching off analog television, is that you'll have a lot of channels. Now, given that, it means that the future of the SABC itself must be redetermined. The old model is not working, so we now have a new model that is coming forth as a result of digital broadcasting. So it is in that context that the issue that you have picked up among other issues of sports and its broadcasting comes to the fore, and really that is really the bigger picture, the context. There are a number of balls that are up in the air, and so many things are happening. You have mentioned ICASA with its inquiry on paid television. There is also the whole sporting rights. ICASA has got a lot of issues that it has on its hand. And for us at the ANC, we are starting this debate so that the future can be certain.
Yeah. If the proposal is successful, so if you are to have your way as far as the policy change, you foresee a situation where all rights to these sporting events are given to the SABC? Is that the proposal? And if it is, how does that then enhance competitiveness in the market?
I think let's make a distinction between what are called sports of national interest. In our case, when Bafana Bafana is wearing the South African flag, the colors of the South Africa, or rugby or netball, when they are competing on behalf of the country, surely the country needs to be able to see them. Not only those who can afford to pay to watch them should be able to have access to them. So it is a principle here, right? But we are not interfering at all with federations like PSL, like cricket is IPL, or is it IPL? And there are a number of other federations. Even some of them do not even have time on television because everything else is squeezed on the SABC, the 3 channels. So with digital broadcasting, it opens up, new possibilities. You could easily have a channel that is dedicated to sports 24 hours. That is what digital broadcasting is offering. So in that case, there must be content. And that content, the best that we can do is to ensure that national sporting codes, and we know that organizations like FIFA are very, very sensitive to government interference. So we're not even talking about government interference. We're just saying that as a matter of principle, if Bafana Bafana is playing, let it be watched by all South Africans. Yeah. It could be delayed broadcasting. We are not going to interfere with the commercial negotiations that takes place, because if SAFA is offering the SABC a package of all the Bafana Bafana games, surely it is between the SABC as a public broadcaster and SAFA. They need to negotiate better terms. We're not going to interfere there, but we are saying that in redetermining what is a new future called digital broadcasting with a multiplicity of channels, about 15 to 20 channels that are free to air, that you can watch at home without paying a fee. Yeah. We need to look at all the old agreements and see what works best and what can be remodeled and all that.
So I mean, have you given consideration to how that splitting of content rights would then impact on the commercial arrangements and the revenue structures, for example, of Bafana Bafana, who will probably complain and say, well, this is going to affect not only the development program, but will also to an extent affect the player salaries, because you are now asking us where we could have negotiated an exclusive arrangement with one particular channel to unbundle these sporting rights, so to speak.
You see, what is the status quo? The status quo is that by law, all Bafana Bafana games must be given to the public broadcaster. But if a private entity wants to equally broadcast what is a Bafana Bafana game here in South Africa, right, they have a right to do so. They have a right to negotiate a deal, because it's all about viewership. Now, we as the ANC, we are not going to dictate to these parties. FIFA won't take kindly to it anyway, as we have experienced it in 2010. Yeah. But we are leaving it to the negotiations that must take place. But in the new dispensation of multiplicity of channels, especially if there might be a dedicated football channel or cricket channel and so on. I mean, currently as we speak, let me give an example now. If Bafana Bafana is playing, and then there is Mvango or any of the other popular programs that are on the SABC. The SABC has to squeeze. It has to squeeze because there is a schizophrenic relationship here or character of the SABC. Is a public broadcaster, on the other hand, is a commercial broadcaster, right? So we as the ANC, given the future, we are also calling for the splitting of the SABC. The SABC, as a public broadcaster, must be declared a public entity. In other words, it must be wholly funded by the coffers or by a levy of some kind, household levy, as in the case of the BBC. Yeah. Its commercial operations must be separated for its public interest operations. So that is what we're calling for. We're calling for dialogue, and we're hoping that our discussion document will create a platform in which we discuss these issues.
Yeah. So are you calling for more text to be directed towards the SABC? I suppose that's a far departure from what Treasury says. No, this entity has got to be profitable by itself. It will not see another cent from me unless it meets these particular criteria and obligations.
You know, public broadcasting is about ourselves, about the cultural identity, is about the unity of the country. It's where, for instance, let me give you an example. we don't have a dedicated health channel. During COVID, we did not have a dedicated education channel. The material is there, but because the SABC was squashed into 3 channels, there was no way that we could really maximize on these new technologies. Now with digital broadcasting, there must be a way of seeing Soul City. The content is there on a dedicated health channel. The same thing with sports. Every time there is a derby, which is a big event in South Africa, between Orlando Pirates, I mean, there are many derbies, but between Orlando Pirates and Kaizer Chiefs, if you have an opportunity of watching a game, which the SABC has got that archive, of watching a game where Jobo Sodo was playing or Asen Zweleng was playing, those derbies of yesteryears, there will be a big viewership. But the SABC in its current form cannot even air the content that it has, which is really history of football in South Africa. So digital broadcasting gives us that opportunity of really making sure that in this new dispensation there are new possibilities. There are, the relationships cannot remain the same. There has to be a new way of looking at and broadcasting as a country.
What's your view then on the move from the TV license to a new tax, a levy of some sort that is independent from the devices that would be paid across the board?
You see, this thing called, there is something called a housing levy. The BBC, there is a model there of ensuring that every household pays, it could be 25 cents or even a 1 rand, that is towards television, because the assumption in those countries is that every household that has electricity has a TV set, and therefore it must pay for it. So if you are able to introduce new ways of collecting revenue for the public broadcaster, surely let's move in that direction. So we are calling for a national dialogue, similar to when we were determining the future of GCIS. There was a national task team that was established. So we are saying, let there be a national task team where all role players can come together and say, how do we see the future of public broadcasting in South Africa? Because it is essential that we have public broadcasting in South Africa. There's no doubt about it. Nobody can say no. But we don't want a public broadcaster that is equally being a commercial player and competing with commercial players. Let there be a separation of the two so that competition can be determined properly. But public broadcasting, like electricity, like water, like everything else that we land and everything else, government must make sure that everybody has a right to see themselves or hear themselves on radio, and digital broadcasting gives us that opportunity.